Willie! Willie! Willie!
Slavery. Little Johnny, can you hear me? No.
And holding a job, meeting car payments and other living expenses, David continues to gamble.
There's no way that I could stop it cold turkey. That's part of...
Oh?
And holding a job, meeting car payments and other living expenses, David continues to gamble.
There's no way that I could stop it cold turkey. That's part of...
Game. But like a game, you must follow the rules. Drive single file and keep to the right. Obey all the signs and lights. And plan your moves ahead of time. Use your head. Think about what might happen next, so you can be ready to avoid trouble. If you see a game, but game. But like a game, you must follow the rules. Drive single file and keep to the right. Obey all the signs and lights. And plan your moves ahead of time. Use your head. Think about what might happen next, so you can be ready to avoid trouble. If you see a person seated in a parked car, think about the best move if something like this should happen. Since many drivers cannot see a bike approaching from the rear, be prepared for something like this. Or this. Sometimes the moves look like complicated puzzles. When you find yourself in a difficult traffic situation, the smartest move may be to get off your bike and move out of danger. Dismount and walk your bike on the sidewalk. Sometimes making a left turn is a dangerous move. Here is one way of doing it safely. Walk your bike across the street with the light. When the light changes and the traffic is clear, walk your bike to the other side of the street. When it is safe, you may continue on the street. Here's the wide tread barrel design. Saved a lot of rubber, but it had a few drawbacks. It took a lot of trial and error before we finally developed this model called the Safety. The bike was safe, but the rider sometimes wasn't.
Is there an answer to this mess?
Louie! Louie!
Thanks. I'll remember. Really. Well, so long. Good luck. And remember, if you get that old feeling again, look yourself in the mirror and ask why. Sure will.
Huh?
Come closer.
What for?
Do you know what you look like?
Well, sure I do. Hey, who are you?
Thanks. I'll remember. Really. Well, so long. Good luck. And remember, if you get that old feeling again, look yourself in the mirror and ask why. Sure will.
Huh?
Come closer.
What for?
Do you know what you look like?
Well, sure I do. Hey, who are you?
I'm your mirror. I'm you, as others see you.
I know what I
used to be a clown. And then I learned to listen.
My great-grandmother was a little girl before airplanes or even cars were invented. People were driving bicycles. Of course, not the kind we have today. This one is called an ordinary or penny farthing. On those rough roads, the ride was so bumpy, some called bikes bone crushers. Left, right, slow down or stop.
Called an oximeter. It measures the exact amount of oxygen in a person's blood at any given moment. It does this by means of an attachment connected. The doctor stops giving him air. A rescuer will demonstrate the arm lift method of resuscitation. Watch the oxygen indicator.
No change. Hey, wait! It's going down.
Well, that means he's getting no air into his lungs, no oxygen.
Sometimes breathing stops because of an overdose of certain medicines.
How come?
The chest muscles become carbon monoxide from an automobile exhaust. If there's some
in a dance set to a rhythm, none of them hear.
I'm going to say this. I think he should be thrown in prison.
Thrown in prison?
Or he thrown...
When you're at home, you always know exactly where you are inside the house. You could probably make a drawing of the way the rooms are arranged. You know it so well, you can show the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, and the bedroom very easily. This kind of drawing is called a house plan. And, of course, you know your way around your house, too. When you want to go from the living room to your bedroom, you know you have to go through the kitchen and the dining room to get there. But Sandra wants to... Do you know what the word scale means? When we see Sandra's father on a home movie screen, he looks about 36 inches tall. In this snapshot, he's about 2 inches tall. The picture of Sandra's father on the screen is a small-scale picture of the real man. The snapshot is an even smaller scale picture of him. And so we...
And pulse. If the victim is unconscious, be sure that her airway is clear and she is breathing properly. Finally,
The ambulance is on the way.
remember that even if you have succeeded in reviving her, she still needs immediate medical attention.
While many people abuse drugs and alcohol to get high, just as many use chemicals to escape the emotional pain of daily life. This seems to be evident on Skid Row, where those sad losers represent our image of the true addict. But in reality, the woman who swallows her Valium every morning is just as addicted. And the doctor who ends each afternoon with a shot of Demerol. Or the high school students who take booze from their parents' liquor cabinets each day. They are all just as addicted. They all share many similarities with the compulsive gambler. Everything else, there are destructive as well as positive ways of achieving it.
Perhaps because euphoric experiences feel so good, we want them all the time. The reality, of course, is you have a zest, a moment of ecstasy that we can't get in our normal everyday experience. To seek euphoria, therefore, is a pretty powerful kind of motive, and we're going to do a lot of things in order to get to that place.
To some, the thrill of speed creates an incredible feeling of ecstasy.
To the wonderful world of compulsions and addictions, including a wide range of wonderful madcap ways of making the only life you are likely to live a non-stop, repetitive blur.
Remember your very first ride on a merry-go-round? At first you weren't sure whether you were afraid or having fun. But sooner or later it became the biggest thrill of your life. When you were older, you needed more, and you found it on a ride where your head was spinning and you seemed to be totally out of control. And then you discovered a ride that at first seemed more like terror than fun, but you came back for a second time and a third. The thrill of it all was habit forming, and you wanted more.
Getting high.
In recent years,
that sure is a lot of words. I don't know where to start. Well, the first thing to do to understand an instruction is to look for the important words. Words like those. Naturally, nothing he did worked out very well, because he didn't follow instructions. The problem was, he didn't know how. And that was too bad, because Sinbad had always wanted to be a sailor. And as everybody knows, sailors have to be able to follow instructions. It would have been simple for Sinbad to learn, but for some reason, he had never done it.
Simple? Are you kidding? I couldn't learn how to follow instructions in a million years.
Sure you could. It's easy. It is? You just do 3 things. First, you pay it.
A famous poet has called this the age of anxiety. He meant that a certain sense of fear and of terror characterizes much of our lives. To many of us, this may seem like poetic license, but I don't think you'll accuse me of poetic exaggeration if I suggest that the fear and terror that this patient shows is something with which all of us are in some measure familiar.
It's just unreasoning fear, shakiness, dizziness, every awful feeling that can grip a human being is what hits you when you've got one of these panic bouts.
And so now you've been totally unable to work for how long?
Close to 3 years.
3
And their pattern, same person fights toward consciousness. New things are happening. Information in the form of sound clock is arriving from outside his body, and this information must be ignored or acted upon. As Arnie becomes a little more conscious and alert, there is still a different pattern to the electrochemical signals in his brain as other portions of it begin to function. He remembers he was studying for a test last night before he went to bed, and that this test is the skull bones. Besides being well protected, the brain receives an enormous supply of blood, carrying nutrients and oxygen. Each step of this involuntary process sets off new stimuli which move to the hindbrain. Coordinating signals then return to the appropriate muscles to move the food along, and to the proper glands to secrete the necessary digestive juices. Breathing and blood circulation are controlled in much the same way, and many other in association of actual stimuli. For example, these printed words can be almost as effective a stimulus to the cortex as the actual object. And finally, an extremely large group that controls muscles in the neck and head, including those involved in speech. Individual neurons, after repeated stimulation by external stimuli, form electrochemical circuits among themselves. Billions of circuits may be set up, each storing bits of information or associations. But
Oh, say, will you give these to her, Mr. T?
Sure thing.
Thanks.
By compulsive starvation.
Margie, let me show you a picture that...
No.
Not really.
Looks just right.
Starvation. Although anorexia is considered an emotional illness, 15% of its victims die from physical starvation. In other words, they starve themselves to death. You're looking at a picture of a 24-year-old woman taken 3 months before she died at a weight of 46 pounds. The disease was given its name, anorexia nervosa, in an English medical journal in 1888. The name means nervous loss of appetite, but that's the wrong name for this disease, because the girls do have an appetite. They just refuse to eat.
I don't know what caused it.
Stopped eating during her senior year in high school. At her lowest weight, her body began to deteriorate. The muscles in her legs began to tear. Now, at 80 pounds, she can no longer do strenuous dancing. When her anorexia was at its worst, she was eating only 1 banana a day. Nancy remembers what it was like then.
After thorough analysis of the parking situation, we have decided to institute a new parking plan. So,
diet unto death.
This is just one of the 625 billion cigarettes that Americans will smoke this year. That's a lot of cigarettes, considering that the majority of us don't smoke. As a matter of fact, male smokers of all ages have decreased. But since 1930, deaths from lung cancer among women have increased over 400%. Dr. Irwin Zement.
It makes all the hair fall out. In fact, it's one of the first things that's happened. I haven't gotten used to it yet.
6 days after we filmed her, Mary Brown died of lung cancer.
I've got 6 classes.
A month after filming The Smokers at Kennedy High School, we assembled 50 of the girls in a classroom to watch themselves and the other smokers seen on our program.
All are valuable life-saving tools because they can make search and recovery of submerged victims faster and more efficient. Walking backward is the proper way to move with fins on land and in snorkel without wearing a mask. In chest-deep water, take a breath. It will be easier for you to locate, recover, and perhaps save the life of a submerged victim. With one or both feet. This makes the ascent faster and less taxing.
There is no vanquished, little Johnny. There is no vanquished shore. You've got to live. You've got to live all alone.
Any part of this system of arteries, there may be narrowing.
Hand was going like this, almost like the stage of epilepsy again. And
performance would still remain within allowed specification limitations on performance.
To find out how electronic music is created, let's first learn and changed into an electric current that also oscillates. This electronic oscillation can then be shown. On the sound synthesizer, it is possible to create and alter envelopes. instruments, it is possible to allow only a narrow band of sound.